Hi, everyone. This is Karen Roy with Life Possible with a Disability. And I'm excited to have Ryan Martin as a guest today. And we have, I don't know, 20 things we want to talk about. So we'll see how the time goes. I met Ryan in approximately 2017 at Numotion's National Leadership Conference. And we briefly met. And then we have a bunch of mutual friends now, like Josh Turek and Jillian Harpin. And then of course, all the people at Numotion that love Ryan Martin, which are a lot. Anyway, I'm going to pass it over to Ryan to talk about his particular disability and kind of his life, and we'll just go from there. So welcome, Ryan.
Oh, first of all, thank you, Karen, for having me. This is awesome to kind of connect on this platform and, talk about the million different things that we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, we may have to put this in, make it like a 3-part episode, right? Or people are. That's the thing. We can that's the beautiful thing about podcasting. Literally do whatever you want, whatever works. So tell us a little bit about your disability. Totally different. I feel like most of my guests at this point have been spinal cord injuries like me or a disease process that was acquired. So, and it is Spina Bifida Awareness Month. So we're going to briefly touch on that.
Yeah, sure. So I think you kind of buried the lead there a little bit. So I was born with spina bifida, and then at the age of 2, my legs were amputated. So I'm a bilateral AK amputee. And that it's not necessarily conventional for somebody born with spina bifida, but it was due to just different medical complications. So I know we talked a little bit off air about this, but I think growing up with your disability is a different opportunity, and presents different challenges than somebody who acquires their disability later in life.
Yeah. For a lot of my friends that I've met, and I remember a guy that was at LSU when I first got shot and went back to school, and I was trying to get up this huge ramp. It was, I mean, for me, exhausting. This guy was born with only one arm. And he pushed up that ramp and opened the door for me like it was nothing. And I remember him, I was like, I don't know how you do this. And he was like, this is, for me, I don't know any different. It's actually pretty easy. He's like, for you right now, it's really hard because you haven't even developed your upper body to the point you can like push this wheelchair up a ramp. I
Yeah,
don't know if you feel the same way.
agreed. I think you get longer. It's kind of natural. And like for me, I've never walked, so there was no, maybe grieving or processing the new life and adjusting because, from day one, this was relying on my wheelchair for, mobility and different things of that nature.
So being a kid with a disability, was that, I mean, I know for my kids being raised by a mom in a chair, they don't know any different. So, and I asked my son the other day on a podcast, I was like, did you get teased? Like, were people mean to you about it? He said, no, like nobody said, oh my God, your mom's in a wheelchair. That's,
Yeah.
but was that an issue growing up with kids?
Yeah, I think kids are kids, and unfortunately, especially when you kind of go through that, that middle school phase, it's something that's allows you to stick out, and maybe not in the right way. And also like I grew up I was adopted, and so I grew up in a family of 12 where 8 had various disabilities or special needs. So to me, like like from the earliest moments I can remember, there was always, wheelchairs around and different things of that nature. So it was normal to me, aside from, just internally, but like what I saw around me growing up. So it was, it definitely provided its challenges, and I think that's probably why I gravitated to sports, just because getting involved in basketball specifically, it allowed me to change the narrative a little bit about kind of my personal journey. It wasn't like Ryan with no legs or Ryan in a wheelchair or Ryan who's different. It's Ryan who can play basketball, Ryan who really likes to shoot the basketball, all those type of things, which is more when you're a teenager or you're a young kid and you're trying to find your identity, it's a more of a positive identity than necessarily like, hey, this
Yeah,
is
that's
a
amazing.
disability.
Yeah. And I think that even people that acquire their disability do that sometimes. That's how they find their community. That's how they find maybe where they excel. I tried to play wheelchair tennis. I suck. So that was not like,
It was
um,
not your outlet.
no, I didn't. No, that wasn't going to help me at all. So how old were you when you started with basketball?
So I started playing when I was, I think, 14 years old, which seems like a long time ago, which it is.
How old
And
are you?
42. So
Okay.
yeah, so,
53. So don't feel bad.
yeah, no, it's okay. Age comes wisdom, right? And so it really was the first time, like I had mentioned, where it was like, oh, I really like this, and I could really kind of focus energies on something. Um, and it allowed me a way to connect with my peers, whether they were individuals with disabilities or they were not.
Cool. So tell us, I mean, obviously that worked out for you. So tell us a little about how your basketball career progressed.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I feel really blessed in the sense of to have had the opportunities to, go to college and play basketball and get a degree, and then also, to kind of play over in Europe and get paid to play, which is always, when kids learn that, hey, oh wow, that's an option, when we do our
Well, it's an
basketball.
option for the best. I feel like you're downplaying it. Not everybody gets to go play professionally in Europe.
No, but I mean, for a kid, for a kid with a disability to have that, even if it's a goal that's not going to be something they're able to obtain, just to know that that's a possibility, I think is a great thing out there. And so that was an awesome experience. I got to kind of see the world on somebody else's dime, which is always the best way to do it. And then pick up some other language skills and different things of that nature. So I can't really complain. And it was when I started playing basketball in my backyard or against my neighbors, just playing it. I never fathomed that I was going to be playing in Madrid or Barcelona or some of these cool cities and meeting these people. So I thought that was a really awesome experience. And then after playing in Europe, I got to join the New York wheelchair Knicks basketball team, which was great to play,
Wow.
to kind of finish out my career playing at such a high level back in the U.S. and after spending so many years abroad. So it's been a great opportunity for me individually, and it's really given me a platform and a position to give others these opportunities. Whether it's through my foundation or with my current role with CUNY. So an awesome journey, and it's changed a little bit, but definitely very thankful and grateful for that ride.
So our mutual friend now, I mean, he's newly my friend and my coworker, you and Josh Turek. So Josh just came back home with a gold medal from the Tokyo Paralympics with
Yeah.
a in basketball, which was amazing. So you and Josh have been good friends for a while too.
Yeah, so we actually went to college together, lived in college together, and kind of a funny story. Like I really owe a lot of my professional European journey to him because he's the one who convinced me to come out there and kind of created a tryout scenario for me with some of the clubs out there. It was really great to see him, kind of cap his career um, you know, on TV here, because as NBC kind of streamed everything. But it's great, and I don't understand. I don't think people would know how hard he worked and how like maniacal he is, with his details and his training and his diet. So it was nice to see it culminate in such a gold medal fashion, if you will.
Yeah, he's pretty serious guy. Like does not joke around. He worked his I mean, his whole life, and like you said, every bite that he put in his mouth, and the way that he trained, and yeah, pretty impressive, and so happy for him.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely.
So tell us then. I guess the next step in the journey would be you created the Ryan Martin Foundation.
Mhm.
Um, maybe tell us about how that came about.
Yeah, sure. So, when I would come home in the summer months from playing overseas, I would get a lot of requests to do speaking engagements at, various various basketball camps a lot for able-bodied athletes. Some of the different NBA players that had went through UConn or had Northeast ties would come back and do summer camps, and so I would do a lot of speaking at these camps, talking about my basketball journey and all that sort of stuff. And it kind of was like, oh, this is a really cool opportunity for kids. But I was like, well, why don't we have this for kids with disabilities? And why am I not doing this for 250 kids every summer? And so, with the help of a lot of folks, with my family and some friends and some really keen donors at first, and then even Josh was involved in helping create kind of the blueprint for it. We started doing camps, and I just wanted to do one camp in full disclosure, and it ended up evolving. It ended up evolving
Right.
to 15 camps where we were able to start doing camps in Europe and run consistent programming in Spain, and then also back here in the US, and
Wow.
during non-COVID times be able to really impact the community. So definitely, much like my basketball career, was not expecting it to kind of grow to what it grew to, but really super excited as we continue to kind of expand our mission and reach more individuals with disabilities. And it, as much as it's about basketball, it has nothing to do with basketball. Like all of our staff members are individuals with disabilities, and so what we want are,
Including Jillian
including Jillian, who's
and
awesome. So,
Jillian Harpin.
so when Jillian
Yeah.
listens to this pod, hi
She
Jill.
works for Numotion. She's, yeah, she's our senior financial analyst. Um, Bright, young, beautiful girl who acquired a disability, I think about 5 years ago or so. And she's Ryan's treasurer for the foundation. So I just want to give her a shout out. But
Yeah, no, absolutely. Jillian's great. But that's what we want to do. We want to show individuals with disabilities who have kind of navigated their own struggles, whether they grew up with their disability or acquired it later in life, and now are doing all of those things that lead to a higher quality of life, driving themselves, traveling, holding down jobs, participating in sports, whatever the case may be. So I think a lot of times it's really important for our youth with disabilities to have examples of folks that they can relate to, who are doing those
yeah,
things that you and I probably take for granted, but for them they might not see folks like them doing those things.
yeah. I mean, because I was 19 and I live in South Louisiana, there weren't a lot of wheelchair users for me. And it was 1987. There was no internet, like not really.
Hmm.
And so I, it was harder for me to find community. I basically just delved back into a completely able-bodied world and
Right.
just did my best to like exceed everyone's I mean, my own expectations. I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to work and I wanted to, you know, so I kind of didn't have that until much later. So, but it's huge in finding community. And I think that's where I did the wheelchair tennis for a while. And then I did the advocacy stuff led to Miss Wheelchair Louisiana and then Miss Wheelchair America. So that's kind of where I ended up finding my niche through the kind of advocacy community just because I suck at sports. So, oh, yeah. But there is something for everyone, like to find your community within the disabled community, I think.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, we use
so yeah.
we use sport as that example, but I tell the kids, I'm like, I just want you to take those lessons that you learn from participating in sports, leadership, work ethic, all of those things, and apply it to whatever your goal is, right? And we've got our
Yeah.
our big thing is we really want our individuals with disabilities and our youth with disabilities to get into the college space, just because of the limit from an employment perspective. And you and I can both, as folks who are gainfully employed, would say like, hey, that's a really vital part to our quality of life. And so just really hoping to teach them those fundamental skills that they can take into whatever areas they want to do.
That's so great, Ryan. Like, yeah, I think, like I just jumped. I mean, I had a lot of benefits just because the family I was born into. College
Mhm.
was an expectation. It was, just what you do. And then I wanted to get a master's degree, and they were fully supportive of that. But not everyone has that. And it is also not just Spina Bifida Awareness Month, but it's also it's Disability Employment Awareness Month too. So touching on that is important. You know, making campuses accessible and disability friendly so people can further their education and, like you said, then become gainfully employed. Like, I absolutely love what I do. I've always been very thankful that I had those opportunities that everyone doesn't necessarily have.
Yeah,
And
very.
you giving that example to kids through your foundation is just amazing.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's definitely grown when I sit here and reflect. Like it's grown larger than I thought we were gonna be able to do things, but it means we are impacting more folks. And I really try to use we, because as much as my name's out in front of it, there are countless people. Like Jillian's making sure I don't get us in trouble with our 501c3 laws, and
Yes.
Josh is at every camp, making sure that he teaches every single kid how to shoot the basketball, and all of those
Yeah.
different things. So there's a mountain of folks who, Lindsay, my fiance, is really intricately involved in just making sure that we don't get the camp shut down from a compliance perspective,
Right. Yeah.
uh,
So do you have a wedding date?
we do. So it's gotten pushed back a couple of times just because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so hopefully with the vaccine and, things, we'll be able to actually do that this summer.
Good. Congratulations.
Yeah. We'll have to get new
That's
spin
always
for my chair,
new what?
new spinergies for my chair. So they match
Yeah,
my,
yeah. Yeah. So tell me, how did the relationship happen with New Motion? Were you a New Motion customer? Like, how did, because I know our New Motion has a foundation.
Mhm.
By the way, anybody listening to the podcast, if you run a nonprofit, you can get in touch. You can just Google New Motion Foundation, and there's a way to apply for funds if you are running a disability related nonprofit. So tell us, how did that relationship start?
Yeah. So I was a customer prior to, like, when I think it was Connecticut Rehab. And then
Okay.
so just that relationship when New Motion came in about, and whether it's the New Motion Foundation or New Motion from the other side of the house, has always been really super supportive in helping us get off the ground with our camps and making sure that equipment related issues aren't issues during camp week, and then also making sure the
Right.
kids that come have a chair, so all the other weeks of the year they're able to do what they need to do. So they've been fantastic. Jillian, Mike is on our board. We've had other folks who have worked with New Motion as
Mike
well.
Swinford or Mike Mowry?
Mike Mowry, yeah, it has been,
Okay.
is on my board, and so they've been really super supportive with it. And our mission kind of aligns with theirs as far as just getting individuals with disabilities, specifically youth, out and about, and competing in sports, but making sure that they have the equipment they need long term to be successful.
Yeah, that's cool. So, I think that sort of brings us to what you're doing now at CUNY, and then kind of how we're collaborating again in this amazing project.
Yeah, so I'm the director for inclusive and adaptive sports for the City University of New York. And so the university is comprised a little bit differently. So it's a collection of 22 different colleges across the 5 boroughs of New York City, to comprise one university. And of that, there's a large critical mass of individuals with disabilities. And so working with New Motion and the team to kind of make sure that our students with disabilities have what they need from a mobility device perspective to be able to navigate campus life. And it's kind of a really simple philosophy, but if their chair is broken, they can't go to class, right?
Right.
If we're sending them all around New York City to get equipment repaired or order new equipment or to get a new cushion or whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
they're missing out on opportunities to participate
Yeah.
in campus life and extracurricular activities. And so we're trying to marry the concept where that access is more intertwined in the fabric of services we provide our students with disabilities. And so Numotion has been really gracious in trying to develop this pilot program, during times in New
It's
York City
amazing.
where it's vastly more complicated to get a project off the ground like this.
Yeah, that's amazing. So kind of having like for those of you who don't know, we do seating clinics all over the country. So and most of the time that is in a hospital or an outpatient clinic setting. Some of times we do things in different branches of Numotion. But so we're trying to incorporate basically almost a seating clinic
Right.
inside these 22 individual campuses or in a certain number of them, I guess, where people can get their needs met, get their evaluations done, be evaluated for a repair, and keep them functioning and moving.
Yeah, and I mean, from an education perspective, right? If we look at our K-12 model here in the U.S., we look at 504s and IEPs, that generally impact individuals with disabilities, and we talk about like, okay, what is their barrier to education? What allows them to access the curriculum that they're supposed to be acquiring? And so one of the things in the K-12 setting we look at, and this is kind of my background here in the education space, is okay, if the individual cannot get to class because of a mobility issue, that's impacting their way that they can receive their education. And so we're kind of applying that same framework into our CUNY structure. And the goal long term is to start with a seating clinic in each one of the 5 boroughs in order to kind of reach the demand and capacity that's CUNY related.
Yeah. I just got back from the New Jersey Abilities Expo, but flew into LaGuardia
Yep.
and thought it would be a great idea to rent a car to get to New Jersey. And I get there and it's like getting dark and I'm in a car that I'm not familiar with hand controls that, you know how you're trying to get used to a hand control. It's just like getting used to, I guess, to any car with an accelerator and a brake where you feel really jerky until you figure it
Totally.
out.
Mhm.
And God, what borough is in LaGuardia?
What's that? The Queens.
What borough is LaGuardia? Queens.
Yeah.
So I don't even understand why they have an airport in Queens, but it's fine. So I end up in Manhattan, trying to get to New Jersey. I
What,
haven't been that scared. I've jumped out of an airplane in May, less scary than driving a car I'm not familiar with through the boroughs of New York City. Also, people that are in restaurant boxes in the street should know that they could die because people like me are driving around in the city. And all I could think was, this is a terrible idea. I know why they're doing it, but
totally
this is
makes
a good way
sense
for them to die. Yeah. I was like, you shouldn't be in that box in the street. You
when
should.
they're taking already really narrow like road space and
Yes.
they're making it just that much more like
Yes.
confined.
Yes. And then people are so rude and they're like cutting you off and you're like merging from like 85 lanes to 2 lanes and then you can't switch lanes because they put barriers between them. So if you miss your turn because you forget it, you're like in another borough.
Hmm.
And besides the pedestrians, bicycles, motorcycles that have no regard for cars, and then they put box restaurants in the middle. I was like, what is this? This is stupid. Anyway, although as I looked around, I was like, so many cool places that if I hadn't been by myself, I would have totally parked my car and gotten out and had dinner and had a glass of wine. Um,
Right, exactly.
yeah, it was like a dichotomy of like, I hate this and I love this. And now I can't even stop and have fun. But yeah. Next time I need to like get some New Yorkers involved and like call you guys up before I get there and not be like a
And out.
stranger from Louisiana.
And you should definitely Uber. Way more convenient.
Dude, I know. I thought so in my thought process, I was like that I could have totally Ubered. My wheelchair fits directly on the plane for Southwest, so I don't
Right.
have to deal with an aisle chair. I had a direct flight home and not having to deal with an aisle chair and a direct flight. I was like, but Southwest doesn't fly into Newark anymore. So
Mhm.
I had to fly into LaGuardia. And then I knew that once I got to the expo, to not deal with the shuttle, it was like, it'd be nice to have a car where I could just go back and forth between the expo and the hotel without relying on the kindness of strangers or like the whole shuttle thing. So, I mean, it was brilliant in my head. Um, and honestly, I got out fine. Like, although I don't, Sunday evening still, I probably went no faster than 20 miles an hour all the way from New Jersey back to New York City. But I lived to make it back home. So next time I'm calling you.
Okay, let me know.
Yeah. Um, we are just getting this program kind of off the ground, right? So tell us kind of where we are in the process of getting these seating clinics inside these boroughs of CUNY
Yeah, so
campuses.
we're looking to launch later this month with kind of pilots, and our students will have kind of direct access to schedule kind of clinic hours at the various
Mhm.
locations.
It's exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and I think it's going to make a impact in our ability to keep our students with disabilities, actively engaged in extracurricular stuff, but also keep them, more focused on the academic piece.
I don't think that people have any idea. So when you're trying to keep your equipment moving, there's all kinds of other things that like that bodily functions that you have to take care of when you have a disability. There's when you are trying to like work a full time or be a full time student, do the normal things of life like cook for yourself, grocery shop, do laundry. Then you add to that the complications of if your chair breaks, um, what may or may not be. I don't think that able bodied people kind of understand how hard it is to keep up, and give a as a student or as an employee your 110%. I
Mhm.
think is exponentially harder for us.
Yeah, I think inherent to our situation, we learn to navigate that, and I think we're able
Mm-hmm.
to apply kind of that same discipline and same structure that to your point, that we have to manage from a day-to-day basis into our employment setting. I think there's a lot of demographics and a lot of statistics to support the loyalty of individuals with disabilities in the employment space, how they kind of
Yeah.
they stay in for a company, and they kind of work for a company for a long time, and different things of that nature. And I think, overall in the employment world, I think folks with disabilities are a really under-tapped resource
Yeah.
for different companies.
Yeah. I'm doing a panel with ADP, actually for Numotion, they do our payroll and that kind of thing. Huge company. And we were actually talking about that. We're talking about the loyalty of people with disabilities. I mean, number one, I think when you've been given a chance, that's going to foster some loyalty. And like you said, we are out of the box thinkers,
Mhm.
extremely efficient because we have to be, extremely organized because we have to be. And all of those skills translate to making a better employee. And there are tons of, there's data to back this up that hiring people with disabilities is a smart business move, period. It's the right thing to do, but it's also, we make amazing employees.
Yeah, I always antiquate it when I get brought in to speak on, because October being Disability Awareness Month in the employment space, when I get brought in to, speak to companies, and companies ask, well, how do we find the next, Karen who could work for our company, or Jillian or Ryan or Josh? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm always like, well, first of all, you need to be intentional about your practices, and if you want to be inclusive, you need to think through your practices and make sure all your practices are inclusive. But I also think, when you're trying to put together a team on a basketball court, right? I'm going to look at 100% of my options as players. So from an employment setting, if you're a boss, an HR manager, whomever has that hiring practice, why would you not look at 100% of the candidates available, as opposed to
Right.
saying, okay, the 20% or the 15 or 20%, whatever data point you want to use, we're not going to look at that population to kind of fill this need. And so
Right.
I think it's short-sighted. And, you know, we always talk about like, oh my God, it's the right thing to do from like a, you know, like a, you know, a humanistic approach, but it just makes good business. You know,
Yeah.
and
And
I always antiquate with like, yeah, we could tell you this is what you should do because it's the right thing to do from a fundamental perspective. But to your point, there's also business justifications. There's also statistics and data to show that like, hey, you should probably look in this direction as well.
right now there's a employment shortage, a severe employment shortage. And I think businesses of all shapes and sizes need to be actively seeking, like through Disability In, and there are tons of others, Wounded Warriors, tons of different organizations that literally have a database full of resumes of people with different types of disabilities. I
Mm,
know Disability In does these like matchmaking sessions where there's like where they're employers and there are people with disabilities looking for a job. There are lots of places people can go to seek out this segment of the population that's very underemployed. But right now, like if you, there are, yeah, because all of us, there's so many people in our community that would just are waiting for a chance to be gainfully employed. Um, and, and right now there's a labor shortage. So why aren't you looking? Or maybe they don't know where to look, Ryan, you know, I mean, and that's kind of, I think why we both do what we do
yeah.
is to get the word out.
Yeah. And I think for folks with disabilities who are applying for work, so I'm sure, Karen, you could relate to this because I'm sure people talk to you about this concept, you know, like, you know, oh, I didn't get the job because I'm in a wheelchair or I'm not going to get this opportunity. You know, I always talk about like as a person with a disability, when I go into an employment setting, is like I'm interviewing them as much as they're in, you know, interviewing me. Like when I go in and have that interview, right? Is there somebody who looks like me? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there somebody, you know, and whether in the disability space, it could be an invisible disability, it could be a visible disability. But you can tell in how your room is set up, right? That like, okay, yes, they've thought through this, right?
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I always do is I bring up my disability because I know they're legally not allowed to ask certain questions, and so
Right.
I'll just answer whatever because I'm like, hey, let's take care of the white elephant in the room.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't had to interview in a long time. Fortunately, just you know because you know, like for this job with CUNY, I was sought out just because of you know, they found me type of thing, and it
Yeah.
wasn't like a search deal. But you know, when I do interview, like I make sure I have my keys in my hand. I make sure I open the door to get into the meeting room by myself. If there's a chair in where I want to wheel in my chair, maybe I'll transfer to show that I have that ability, right? And I
Right.
try to put people at ease with a perspective of like, okay, hey, this person's independent. They drove. This person can navigate our office environment, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
immediately, you know, in questions talk, you know, when they talk about like, hey, why am I a good candidate? You know, I'll immediately bring up my experience in adaptive sports or in wheelchair basketball or some of the other things that I've done to kind of open that up and let that happen.
Yeah.
And I do that for two reasons. One, to make sure that they feel comfortable with it, right? Because I'm now taking that because HR people generally don't have a lot of personality anyways. But the other piece is I want to see how you respond when I serve this up to you. And
Right.
it's really I don't want to say it's really easy, right? The easy part is getting the job, but how am I valued when I get there?
Right.
And if I'm the only person with a disability at whatever the company, whatever the employer
Mm.
is, you know, that would be kind of a red flag for me in the sense of like, well, you know, maybe they're really good in other aspects, you know, one of the other four pillars of diversity in their recruiting and
Right.
hiring practices, but maybe they're a little bit lacking in this area. And do I want to be that person who's going to do that? Right. In my younger
Yeah.
days, I'd be like, well, heck yeah, let me whole change the whole system. But now
Right.
an employer who's like or as an employee who's got a good resume, has the commensurate education and is articulate enough to explain himself in an interview, I've turned to people and been like, I don't see the fit. What am I missing? And then like you
Wow.
know,
Yeah.
kind of flip it on, flip the narrative and flip the
I
perspective
love that.
in the HR
It
world.
may, you know what that reminds me of? is dating. Like if first, like whether it's, you know, it's a relationship, and an employer employee situation is a relationship. When you have confidence in who you are, and you roll in the door knowing who you are and what you have to offer, and like you said, it's you're looking for what they have to offer you just as much as they are doing the same thing. um, an air of confidence even when you're younger, and have, I wish this is something that I actually have never had trouble getting a job from the time I got my master's degree.
Hmm.
Every job I've applied for, I've gotten. And I know that that's not like
No.
probably typical, but I think that I I knew who I was and what I had to offer earlier on, and that's only gotten better since I've gotten older. Um, but there, yeah, there's definitely something you just said, and you do have to set people at ease, because if they've never been around someone with a disability, or very few people, they are going to be well, HR they can ask, but they're
Yeah.
going to be hesitant. Um, and I also want them to know what I'm capable of, and um, yeah, so
Well,
there's definitely something to be said for that.
yeah, and from a confidence perspective, and I mean, we could belabor this point forever, but like if that is a barrier for me to figure out how good of an employer you are and how potentially good as an employee and what that match is like, why don't I destigmatize that? And then we can get down to what really is going to matter. Like, what is the job? What type of candidate are you looking for? What is the compensation level as the employee that I am expecting? What is,
Mm-hmm.
maybe some of the fringe benefit packages that I'm expecting, as well. So I think it's,
Right.
but the other thing I would say is very, very true, and it's unfortunate, even though we have a labor shortage. I do feel as an individual with a disability who's applying, you just need to be better. You
Yeah,
know,
I know.
and I don't think that's the plight of just individuals with disabilities. I think you can look at, a lot of different minority groups, and I don't mean to relate one to another because that would be foolish,
Yeah, but yeah.
but antiquate this analogy in the sense that, like, if you're the only person in the room that is, gender, race, and all of these other different things, you are monitored and evaluated differently.
Yeah, it's true. I've always felt that pressure to 100% exceed whatever their expectations were. And maybe that's part of my personality anyway. It's kind of hard to tell because I was only 19 when this happened. So,
Right.
but but yeah, I go out of my way to make sure I'm killing it. I'm giving whatever extra time I need to get to
Mm.
accomplish my goals, and to, oh, I hate to say this, but to prove my worth. I know what it is now, and I know what I'm capable of. Um, I still look, and I also think that I appreciate my employment maybe more than an able-bodied person. There's that aspect too, where I'm like, and I also have chosen fields that I am passionate about. So
Mm.
being a social worker before this, and then being in sales for CRT, and now doing kind of the marketing side of things and government relations. These are things that I would do in my free time, and do in my free time. Um, which is advocate for people with disabilities. And so, yeah, there's that aspect too.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I totally agree, and I think for folks with disabilities out there who are, kind of working through that process, I mean, stick with it too. I mean, like, Karen, you might be the only person I've ever heard of who's gotten every job they've applied for.
I know.
But so that's awesome to you, and it speaks to.
And I mean, that could be a fluke. I mean, I just remember when I got out of grad school, I was one of the first interview I got was at an outpatient psychiatric clinic, and I was one of the first ones of my class for my master's degree that to get a job.
Yeah.
Um, so, but and I mean, and luckily I don't move around a whole lot, but this social work jobs I had, and then for Numotion, they came after me. One of the managers of the ATPs saw me at a demoing an exoskeleton at a on the board for the Brain and Spinal Cord Injury Association of Louisiana. And he came up to me and said, would you be interested in sales? And I was like, yes. So, and thank God, yeah, getting a little burnout on the social worker thing. But you're right. Like that is not the experience of everyone, period. And especially if you have a disability, people are going to make assumptions about your capabilities. The other point that I think is that on this panel, we were talking about Numotion has gone through the Disability Equality Index, which is a bunch of questions through Disability In to try to make our company more disability friendly. One of them is, I think you have to thoroughly scour your job descriptions because some of them say you must lift 50 pounds, like some kind of arbitrary
Right.
requirements for the job role that don't need to be there.
Yeah, and I think when they draft those, they draft like the ideal setting, and like one of the things with folks with disabilities is like we have to learn how to move that box, even if we can't bend down, lift with our legs, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so there's like fortunately for me, with my education, I've never had to that's never been a requirement in one of the jobs that I've applied
Mm-hmm.
for, the careers I've created for myself. So I think I think from like an HR perspective, for those who might be listening from that, is really analyzing what does it take to do the job and thinking outside the box of how that job can be accomplished, even though it might not be the conventional way that you thought.
Right. Well, and I think I chose my career because I excluded a bunch of careers thinking I can't be a nurse. I can't be a doctor. I can't be all of these things. I have to be able to stand up to do that. I can't reach this or that, or I couldn't, put a stethoscope. I, I feel like the horizons have broadened and people are security guards now and they are nurses in a hospital. They doctors do surgery that are paralyzed and there are standing devices that they use to be able to see the surgical field. I feel
Yeah,
like back in 1987, 80, when I was choosing my career, I mean, I'm passionate. I love being a social worker. I love what I do. But I was like, I first excluded all the things I couldn't do. I
yeah.
can't do these things.
Yeah, and I hope that folks with disabilities now who might be newly injured or somebody who's born with their disability are able to look at a broader scope of disciplines where they can see themselves, whether it's the medical profession or whatever the discipline might be specifically. I think it's important for them to understand, that, hey, there are folks that are doing this, there are nurses who are using mobility devices to manage their mobility issues during their
Yeah.
employment. So I think so I love and we haven't really touched upon this, so I really like the amount of representation that we're seeing in like an authentic way. There's some representation where I think they're just throwing in the wheelchair racer in the shampoo commercial because, like, hey, everybody's doing that
Yeah.
now, which, okay, I get it. That's cool. But I also think
Yeah.
there is more representation, especially with 24-hour news cycles and social media too, um, where I think kids can relate. I mean, it'll be really interesting when I listen to our youth athletes or our college athletes be like, oh, so and so is doing this in the space, so and so. And I was like, wow. And you could just click a button and you see that, right? And I
Yep.
don't think we can underestimate the importance of that.
No, for sure. I mean, yeah. So some of the articles within kind of the wheelchair space, like New Mobility, will highlight some of these things every once in a while. But it is also nice to see it in the mainstream. In addition to models, and my friend Barb just got what is part of the Torrid national campaign. She did basically won an internet contest because she got enough votes, and she's the first wheelchair user to be a model for a national ad campaign for clothing, and did a photo shoot out in LA. And I mean, Ulta recently did one of the Rolettes. I think it was like a year ago, where
Mhm.
they, you go into Ulta and little girls that use wheelchairs are seeing wheelchair users featured in their ads. And yeah, representation in mainstream media is also huge. But and it's all getting better slowly. Um, you know, yeah. Anyway, well,
Absolutely.
I I think that, well, first of all, we could talk for hours. We've already established that fact. And I hope that you will come back and we can talk about some other things. And yeah, next time I make it up to the Northeast, I'm going to plan better and try to see more of my friends. Maybe I could go check out one of the campuses. Maybe by then we'll have a seating clinic open in one of the boroughs and I can go check it out.
Yeah, and then you can just Uber, so you don't have to, end up in Manhattan when you're trying to get to Newark.
Never, ever again, Ryan. I woke up the next day. I knew I was white knuckling the steering wheel. By the time I'm on the Jersey Turnpike, my hand was like numb. And then when I woke up the next day, like I felt like I'd lifted weights for the entire day because I was like this. No, I mean, live and learn. Uber is definitely what I'm going to do next time. All right, Ryan. Thank you so much.